United. The voice of Oi is calling you with a message that is true. Punky Herbert, straight and skin. All of you, come on in. Because Oi's for skins and Oi's for punks. It's fun and fury. It's urban funk. Yeah, the voice of Oi is unity. The beat of the street is you and me. United is the thing to be. Think how strong we can be. United against society.
Oi, the scourge of the street or the voice of a generation? Ask any two people and you get two very different answers. One thing that can't be contested, however, is that Oi is the most real entity the music industry has ever had to contend with. When Malcolm McLaren's punk rock bandwagon crashed down at Sellout Station, the so-called New Wave exploded into numerous factions. Mod, Two-Tone, the New Romantics, even the New Wave of British heavy metal, all of which claim to be the contemporary face of British music. But whilst the immoral majority of 76 were still posing it under the bright lights of the King's Road, a whole host of vacant youths all over the country that were left unable or unwilling to subscribe to the mainstream punk tribe played a new breed of punk in the pubs to football terrace crowds. Priding themselves on their no-nonsense, hard-nosed attitude and their ability to reclaim the lost reality of punk, bands such as Cocksparrow, Menace, Slaughter and the Dogs, and a band whose army gave them more than their fair share of aggro, as well as chart success, Sham 69, came through and kicked down the doors for what was to be a movement of working-class kids savaging the ankles of the music industry.
Punk was probably the best thing that ever happened to English music, rock and roll music, whatever you want to call it, in 76, 77. And it took us over. It was something we'd all been waiting for. We'd all been listening to, like, rock, but it just wasn't kicking, you know, it wasn't giving it. And punk rock did that for us. And, you know, we'd be up Marquee,
which is just
Sports
there.
X, 100 Club, anywhere like that, watching the bands. And then it started fizzling out because it was taken over by
corporate,
trendy,
music.
College, corporate,
trendy, yeah.
arseholes.
Yeah.
And who were playing punk rock, and they weren't into it. And then, luckily, the football scene, it was the football scene that took it all back over for the Oi scene. And I'll never forget being at West Ham one day, and a mate of mine was in the West Side, and I went, what's that badge you got on? Who are Sham 69? He went, oh, they're a new band, they just started. He said, they're great. He said, go and see them. So we did, and that was it to us. It was harder punk rock. It was street level.
Talking about
punk
things
rock,
you want to hear.
You know, and it was all involved with football. The boys were like watching West Ham or Chelsea or Millwall, whatever team they was watching, and they'd go afterwards and go and see a show, and it'd be what we felt was a proper punk show. And there'd be a band like Sham Sparrow. I mean, this is the early days. This is like, you know, 78, 79, and it was a kick on from there, and we formed a band. And what did we want to play? And we wanted to go in that direction.
Be a Cause the church don't know quite about what I do. And I love this thing, I'm just for you. I'm getting out, back for you. Gotta pay a boat for right now. 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 Over the world, feel at home. Coming through that door, coming back for you. Coming home, coming back for you. Gotta pay a boat for right now. Gotta pay a boat for right now. Gotta pay a boat for right now. Gotta pay a boat for right now.
When punk come along and you were still young when you heard, like, God Save the Queen...
You couldn't quite get the solo out, Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
So you thought, yeah, I'll do Anarchy.
Yeah, I'll do Anarchy, that'd do. Like, and that was the punch, wasn't it? And there was something madcap about it,
There was something
like,
about
you know
it. I mean, it was a new life.
like jumping up and down and going crazy, wasn't it? Like, you know, and
especially where we come from, you know what I mean? It was a bit, it seemed worse than it was then, you know what I mean? But yeah, it was a chance to do something. Everyone went, you fucking never get away with it. You're bollocks, watch us. I mean, the name came about because Jep was rehearsing with the Postman in the old shed, and they was calling themselves the Cockney Rejects at the time. And I thought, fuck, that's a name, isn't it? Like, we'll have some of that, yeah. So he sacked the rest of the Postman, like, gussing.
Jump ship.
Jump ship, yeah.
It was a bad move, I think.
None of them talk to him now.
They're still on their subculture wave.
I know. Fucking hell, they're probably earning a fucking mint now, a lot of them. Makes you sick.
Postman, yeah.
Probably all postmen.
Yeah.
Whoa!
basically started out manufactured, you know, by Malcolm McLaren, who was a very clever man. You know, he got the Sex Pistols together, and they were a great rock band. And from out of that, a lot of punk bands grew, you know, bands like The Clash and that. Then you got the second wave, the angelic upstarts, you know, bands like Cockney Rejects and that. But also you
that's where punk started.
Yeah, you've got like the kind of like the Posey type of bands coming up as well. And I prefer the word street punk, to be honest. It was a sort of a backlash against that.
Running riots!
He was looking at the time for the punk band, I suppose, and he must have been checking out a few bands, and he came there to look at us. As I say, none of us took to him because he wouldn't buy a round of drinks, so we thought this isn't the manager for us, and we both went our separate ways. I don't regret it really. I don't think he'd have been good for us. I think we pride ourselves that we don't get manipulated too often or to too much of a degree. I mean, I don't think we would have been pushed as much as the Pistols were, and I don't think we'd have got ourselves into situations like that, you know, drug overdoses and such. I think it works out for the best, really.
3 years later saw the rise of a second wave of bands, who, although influenced by their earlier punk rock counterparts, had a much harder edge and lyrically were much more down to earth. Football, Courage Best and the mandatory Weekend Punch-Up were much higher up the scale of preferences than the mythical cultural revolutions favoured by the original punk bands. Gary Bushell, then a journalist for the weekly music paper Sounds, saw a pattern of similar bands emerging and was first on the case to examine what seemed to be a new species of punk. Using Sounds as his tool, Bushell wrote about and reviewed these bands, giving them exposure on a scale that bands of today can only dream about. But the scene was still without an identity. Playing on the rowdy images of pack leaders, the Angelic Upstarts and the Cockney Rejects, Bushell compiled the first of many albums used to promote this new face of punk.
When I was playing, you got all them silly boneheads jumping about. You just go, oi, calm down, you know what I mean? Like, oi, leave it out, you know what I mean?
Gal must have sat there going, oh.
We done a song, like, called Oi, Oi, Oi. Which was like,
oi, 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 slow down, you know what I mean? It was like, I have been given a vision. With this vision I shall go forth and create a movement. All little boneheads will beget older boneheads, and older boneheads will beget even older boneheads. You know, complete cunt yourself, basically.
I used to look like, that was it, and I was really born out of that, and you should look at these, like, I know they paid their turn up, like, but I'd like, you know, and they got like skins tattooed on there. I thought, oh, fuck me, you're going to regret that in a few years, mate.
Gary basically championed his own scene, so to speak, because the likes of Sham 69, the Rejects, particularly with like the newer, because Sham was still classed as sort of part of the original wave, as Sparrow were, and then the Rejects came through, Angelic Upstarts, Foreskins, Business, Last Resort, Infant Riot, bands like that came through, and Gary actually championed his own scene, and for want of a better word, he wanted to develop a name for it, and there's this huge scene going around London at the time where it says, oi, you, over here, oi, what are you doing? And, oi, it's as simple as that.
I think Bushell definitely was very, very important to it, because he was the only journalist at the time in a position of power who had the access to write about these bands, and who had the balls to go and do it, because he really did stick his neck on the line, because most of the other journalists, particularly at Sounds, some of the trendy ones, they didn't want us in the office or anything, you know, and he really did get a lot of stick for that. But he stuck by it. I mean, put Business on the front cover, and The Blood, and various other bands, and he helped organise tours. I mean, it was him who got the Oi albums off the ground in the first place. The publicity he gave those bands led to them getting record deals and new labels like Secret and No Future setting up, just because they had an access via the fact that he would write about it. And he also spawned other people, like, say, for instance, Carol Clark at Melody Maker, or other writers like that, came along in his wake and also agree, well, yeah, these bands are good, but Bush was sort of blazed a trail for it. I think he was, you know, I think he saw something, like the Partisans, say, from Wales, and Blitz from Manchester, the Business from South East London, Foreskins East London, a bit like the back of the Carry On Oi album, where he's got the picture of the UK, the kids that came from everywhere, the East Ends all around, and basically he just saw them all there. The Partisans probably didn't know the Foreskins, and vice versa, and just brought them all together, and hey presto, there was a movement, you know. But I think you can't understate Gary's involvement in it, although, you know, he might have dropped out of it later on, but he more than broke the back of it. And I tell you, he's still a fan of it. I'll tell you that for nothing. You know, even to the point this month's Q, I think it is, has got his favourite ever gig, Angelic Upstarts. You know, it's not Iron Maiden or one of the big things he's been abroad in. It's Angelic Upstarts in a prison. So I think that about, you know, still his art is definitely there. I think so anyway, you know. So.
Well, at that time in 1980, it was a real excitement around, because we were in the grips of a real renewal. It wasn't so much a revival, it was a renewal. It was really, there was a lot of bands about, and they were getting back to what the basics of what punk was supposed to be about, because a lot of the punk bands, the first wave of punk bands, have been complete hypocrites and living a lie. You know, they were claiming to be going on about being working class and from tower blocks, of course, and they was all coming from middle class suburbia and posing it, and art school people, and, you know, always made me laugh. Joe Strummer singing about a white riot when he was living in a white mansion over in West London, and so this was the real thing. A lot of these bands, the Rejects, the Upstarts, and all the bands that were around them, there was a real good atmosphere again coming through. That there was something happening, and it was for real this time.
Police call out! murder. Unpaid murder. Murder. Unpaid murder. Murder. Unpaid murder.
Well, I think when I first came along, I mean, it was an absolute punch in the face to the music industry. I mean, they can say punk came along and changed a few things, but when I came along, I mean, this was the kids from the tower blocks or the rough houses who would punch you in the face. They didn't talk about it like, say, for instance, the Clash, or going about some foreign revolution that nobody had ever heard of. It meant nothing to anybody if you came from the East End. I think it was too real. If anything, Oi was too real for the majority of people to take, particularly in the music industry, where rebellion has to be packaged. You know, it's very easy to get, say, should we say, a heavy metal band, giving it all of that, you know, with like plastic things on, and you know, they get their mum to sew their, you know, their badges on. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's not really rebellion. You know, the Oi thing really was, you know, just normal lads walking about, and you know, they're angry about whatever it was. And they had their say, and I just think it was far too real. And they wouldn't part with particularly with the music industry. You know, they don't want to deal with people drinking in bloody wine bars and with silly names like Jemima or something. Do you know what I mean? Who fuck all about music anyway, like, and they just were interested in whatever that fad was. I mean, at one point when the records were really selling, the record companies were looking at it. Hence, like when your Shams and your Upstarts were getting signed. But as soon as the real Oi thing came through, you know, they didn't want to know. They were like, I can't keep away from my door. And yet those bands were selling a hell of a lot more records than groups that were in the charts at the time. And now, here we are, 13 years later. And I tell you now, Best of Blitz, or Best of Foreskins, or Best of Business will sell 10 times more than Best of Kajagoogoo, or something that was in the charts at the time and had loads of money chucked at it and was on the telly. We had none of that. We had no support whatsoever other than what Bushell put in sounds, really. You know, the odd article in Melody Maker. We had no support, and I think, you know, I'm proud to have been associated with Oi. It did come along, and if I keep upsetting those people, I'm really happy, because I don't like them anyway, and they don't like me. So that's lovely, you know. But my music, here we are, like, I'll make a nice living out of it. It's great fun. The lads are great fun. They're all nice people, you know. And I'd sooner deal with that with honesty and straight talking people rather than some old fanny that they come out with in the music industry. I really do.
Do that a lot with things, don't they? If anything that's a danger, they always bring in a violent angle to it, so therefore they automatically get the general public against that particular item. They do it all the time. It's the same rules, whether it's in 1970 to 1995. They use the same techniques on them, and they fall for it all the time.
It works because Joe Public buys their newspapers, whichever they want to believe, and sensationalism sells newspapers, and the newspapers are down. I mean, a lot of people pick up a newspaper and they believe what they're reading in it. They don't actually think that it's actually been put in there to sell the paper. You know, like anything. They sensationalise anything, and anything that's nasty, violent, or this, that and the other, then they'll go overboard on it because it'll sell their paper. Like, because every single newspaper has to outdo its competition, and it's all about marketing and at the end of the day, profit for the barons that own the newspapers. And I don't care what newspaper it is, they're all the same. It's all about making money and profit at the end of the day.
Would you say that's true for the music industry as well?
Of course, the music industry is worse than... The music industry is far worse than the newspapers. Because if the music industry had any brains, they'd be pumping millions into Oi to sensationalise it, sell, and make thousands and thousands of pounds. Well, they never have done. The reason is because they're scared of Oi. They're scared of it because it's real.
Well,
it's real.
Any rebellious music.
You've got there's some huge bands coming out of the States now, punk-wise, and they are shifting millions and millions of copies of albums, but they're very tame. It's like punk was originally in '77. It was so tame. I mean, the Pistols. They great band, but they were manufactured, and it was part of the music industry. I mean, to read Johnny Rotten's book, for example, then you know that what a load of bollocks it all was to them. And it's just, I think they're frightened of it. It's like people are always scared of. I mean, the only other thing that I can think of is like football violence, stuff like that. That wasn't manufactured. That was real, and everyone was fucking scared of it.
Well, truth hurts, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? You know, no one likes to hear what's fucking really going on. I mean, this media thing is so fucking powerful. I mean, you know, like your nans and granddads, they believe what the fucking news tells them. They don't, because they're so far away from the realism of it all. They don't like skinheads in rock and roll bands, basically. You know, I hate it.
The thing in the Sun the other day, in the Immortal Bizarre column by Andy Coulson, and it had like, yob rating, Oasis versus, who's the other big splashes? What's their fucking name? Blur.
Oh, yeah.
Blur, you know, another bunch of fucking ponces, right? And they got their yob rating. out of 10, the singer once pissed in a fucking road in front of the Queen or something, and the other, he threw a fucking a live chicken out of a window, and you know, then someone
got a dirty look off the old
building. Got a dirty look up the old building. Like, you're brating 8, you're brating 9. And you sit there and think, fuck, we used to get crucified for doing, well, much worse than now, obviously. We used to get absolutely crucified, A, by the press, and B, by the record companies, because it was so frowned upon then. I mean, you know, gone are the days when he beat Johnny Rotten's brother up on the steps of EMI, like, for an off-the-cuff remark. Or sort of Nick Kent got chased out of the EMI offices with a slap round here for being a ponce, you know what I mean? It was horrifying. They reviewed their contract over stuff like that. Nowadays, they give you another 10
years. I remember why EMI dropped us. Now, this goes, like, EMI dropped us, there was a few of us stayed for Christmas Eve, and we had a good beer in there. And we come out, and there was a few geezers, like, and there was a bit of a row outside the steps of EMI, like, and, you know, I don't want to go into the fighting bit and all that, but we upped them, and a geezer in a duffel coat joined in. Like, so we upped him and all, like, and he turned, he was a plainclothes cozzer, like, and he ripped out his thing, like, you know what I mean, like, it was all outside EMI, like, so it was a big off, like, you know what I mean, Sebco up the road, like, there's always cozzers about. I won't go, some cunt grass me, like, you know what I mean, 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve, like, you know what I mean, some of that out your bed, while you're trying to sleep, and that's why EMI dropped us.
Yeah,
it was Terry Haynes or someone who, thingy, but now, if you had, say, Oasis or Guns N' Roses done that outside a big record company, they'd be heroes, but that is why
they get another 10-year
they dropped us, because I got nicked for assault in a copper out there and had to go to the Old Bailey and all that, and they said, we can't have this, didn't they?
What do you think, like,
you know?
The Bizarre would give us in their yob rating, like, on times past, you know what I mean? I just wonder.
Apart from the punk bands, you've always got to look at the mainstream, because underneath the mainstream there's this big mass of great music that's not allowed to get to the surface because of the way the music business is. But, you know, bands like Blur coming through and Oasis, you know, they're like a sort of tip of live music. You know, they're like the tip of the iceberg of what's underneath.
I believe it's the only honest music scene there's ever been. And that's something a little bit special. You can't say that about any other music scene, because the songs, you listen to the lyrics, they can either be taken one way or the other. There's a bit of innuendo or they mean something. They said what they felt, and I always felt comfortable with it because I knew where I stood, even if I didn't like what I was hearing by certain people. And I like that in life as well. If someone tells you straight to your face, I don't like you, think, well, I know where I stand now. Yeah. You know, and it was that honesty that a lot of people always focus on, you know, the aggro or the politics or whatever, but it's the only honest music scene that there has ever been. Because punk started off quite honest. Famous Johnny Rotten quote, we're the only honest band there's ever been on the music scene. But, you know, he was pulling his strings, you know what I mean, they were still controlled. The people on the oi scene had nothing to lose. So what if they upset you? You know what I mean? So what if they upset their record company? They didn't have a record company, they're pressing it up themselves, that sort of thing. You know, they weren't controlled, they didn't have to bow to anyone. Yeah. And I used to find that quite exciting. Most people might think it's a bit pure and, you know, being honest and whatever, but it was quite exciting. You never knew what, if someone said something to you, if you upset someone, you knew about it. If someone didn't like you, you knew about it. You know, and it's a nice position to be in, you know where you're standing. I think there's too many lies involved in this industry, right from the top to the bottom, in all forms of music.
I mean, you can. I mean, with you. I mean, you take some of the early Oi stuff and that, like for example, Suburban Rebels or Wonderful World or Running Riot, for argument's sake. But there's not too much doubt what they're trying to say when you finish listening to the song. You take something like Nirvana, for example, or Alice in Chains. What's all that about? What are you trying to say? No one's got any idea. You just come away and your head's even more fucked than it was when you started listening to it in the first place. What's he doing? No, it is, though, isn't it? It's all nonsense, isn't it? It's just all
drivel.
It's drivel, man. Drivel.
It's not good. It's not good at all.
No, it's just not on, though.
I think it's coming up, but we're getting a bit confused now because we go into Europe and they don't even say about Oi. They talk to us like street rock. Then we get into America and we're a punk band, the second generation punk band, and it seems to be. I mean, all the letters we get from England, they talk to us like an Oi band, and then, as I say, from Europe, and they say you're street rock.
The
thing with Oi, it's got the stigma has been attached to skinheads, and it's now coming to fruition where it's no longer the skinhead thing. There's plenty of skins at our shows, but there's hardcore guys coming in. There's punks, there's straights, there's everyone's listening to it now. And it's not a skinhead scene, because the reason that I think a lot of us are thinking about, you know, the word oi, people go, skinheads, they go, oh shit, oh, I'm scared. Why? No, it's just anybody's music, anybody can listen to it, and that is our ambition, to basically crash this scene open. The same way as, I know there's so many different types of music that got acceptable. Grunge. What the fucking hell was grunge? It was punk rock. That's all it was. It was punk rock with crap lyrics, which is basically what grunge was. Everyone went, oh, it's grunge. Oh, yeah. It's hippie, man. Oh, it's trendy. Because they weren't scared of it.
But it's not saying nothing,
because you had Kurt walking around going, oh, hello.
Yeah,
you know, out of his face most of the time.
Safe music.
But no one was scared of him. They were safe. You know, they could manipulate him, and he'd sit there, like, give him a joint and he'll say whatever you want to tell him.
Priding themselves on their honesty have backfired. The two-faced upper-class bigwigs in the media and music industry wanted shot on them, so false accusations were made about the bands and music which attracted rogue elements to gigs, ultimately spelling out the beginning and the end. The media had signed the music's execution warrant. Bands were springing up all over the country, and the now established acts like the Rejects were denting the top end of the national charts and appearing on top of the pops. The bands had formed an organising committee and were playing gigs in aid of such things as prisoners' rights and the Right to Work campaign. Support for the band's ideals was growing every day. Things looked rosy. That was until mid-1981. Gig violence and the hooligan image of Oi had nagged at the bigwigs for the last year or so. So when the second Oi album was released and it was revealed that Nicky Crane, a late-standing model for the LP colour, was a self-avowed Nazi, it was open season for Oi. And there was worse to come. Ironically, 10 years later, Crane came clean and admitted that he was in fact gay and later died of an age-related disease. Musically, Oi had gone two ways. New bands such as The Last Resort, The Strike and Infra Riot were taking a full-on approach, whilst a string of would-be comedians were tackling the more humorous side of life.
Over the hills we go, my dear, to my house which is near. It's a little house with red curtained windows and a fireplace with red glowing cinders. There I'm gonna screw the arse off you. I open the door, we step inside. You sit down while I switch on the lights. I pour you a drink while you slip off your shoes. In my mind I know what to do. I am gonna screw the arse off you. With my Telex Willie. What a wally. I kiss your lips slowly while I undo your dress. My hand reaches down to gently caress. The best of the dead and I'm dead in space. It's all drunk, flashy and it's getting new edge. I've been chilling tonight. Genocide! I've been chilling tonight! Genocide! I've been chilling tonight! Genocide! I've been chilling tonight! Genocide! Is this some kind of joke? You're really a bloke, you're really a bloke. Is this some kind of joke? You're really a bloke, you're really a bloke. Is this some kind of joke? You're really a bloke, you're really a bloke. Is this some kind of joke? You're really a bloke, you're really a bloke.
To Bombay, a travelling circus came. They brought an intelligent elephant, and Nellie was her name. One dark night, she slipped her iron chain, and off she ran to Hindustan and was never seen again.
Nellie the elephant bucked a trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum. Nellie the elephant bucked a trunk and tumbled up to the jungle. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum.
Night by night, she danced to the circus band. When Nellie was leading the big parade, she looked so proud and grand. No more tricks for Nellie to perform. They taught her how to take a bow, and she took the crowd by storm.
The donkey said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum. Now Nellie the elephant packed a trunk and tumbled up to the jungle. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum. The head of the herd is calling far, far away. They met one night in the silver night on the road to Mandalay. She went with a drummity drum, 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 drum. Now Nellie the elephant packed a trunk and tumbled up to the jungle. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum. Now Nellie the elephant packed a trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum. Now Nellie the elephant packed a trunk and tumbled up to the jungle. Off she went with a drummity drum, 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 drum.
the energy and the attitude and everything from the early bands and the songs they wrote seem to be in a different league. Perhaps it's because we're used to it or whatever, but there's no one that has really excited me that's come through the ranks new. And I think that's why there's bands like Sparrow and The Business still going out, still going abroad and playing. It's because there's still the punters out there and they want to see something, but there's no new bands that the punters look up to as good as that.
Ideally what we'd like is a younger band to come up and hopefully sort of say, right, you know, bollocks, we're going to try and be the new Business, and boot us off the stage. Support us and blow us off and, you know, that sort of crap. I know it sounds an old cliche, but that's how we built ourselves up. And I want someone else to, like, come up and have the art to, like, go for it. Go for the throat. When you're supporting a band, don't respect that band you're supporting. You go for their throat, because then you can be... And I'm not talking about money, I'm not talking about finances at all. I'm talking about having your say and getting your word in and being there. But you've got to work hard and you've got to blow that main act off stage. Don't care who they are. You've got to blow them. Blow them away, and then...
That's attitude.
That's attitude. That is going, come
You're
on,
going
let's
to
have it.
fucking
You know?
cause, you're going to
Don't
cause
sit
it.
back and go, oh, there you go. You know, go for it.
Good man, Stoke. Cheers,
And
mate.
like, you got a couple of these boneheads sitting there after, like, you know, we've just done the gig and we're sort of segueing into these blues medleys, stuff like that, and sort of Radar Love, bits and pieces, you know, stuff that we've always loved, you know. Now you can do it, you don't care. So we're doing this, and we went backstage, and there's a couple of boneheads sitting there like this, and he goes, "What are you listening to now?" So he turns around and he goes, "Oh, that Travelling Wilburys album, brilliant." He went, "The what?" He went, the Travelling Wilburys. He went, "Oh, what music are you liking?" He said, "Oh, the same, you know what I mean?" So I've got through Hendrix, through Zeppelin, through this, that and the other, you know. We've got a couple of bands coming on there, Thunder are pretty good. Like, "Oh, my God, you are destroying statues."
Yeah, I know.
And all this. They were shocked. They thought we'd walk in. I mean, forget this, mate, this is natural. I'm a conscripted skinhead now, like. But they sit there, they think that we're saturated with posters on their bedroom walls now, with one stinky bed there, you know what I mean? Never mind the wiping kids and all that, you know, and you're sitting there with your fucking oil thing on your turntable, going fucking play out like, oh, bloody, I fucking love it, I do. Fuck all that.
Better is the enemy. A major is the enemy.
Major is the enemy, yeah. Fucking badges on all over. Sad.
It was amazing to me when we played abroad that everyone knew every word of every song. You know, none of us expected that, you know. And sort of 700 or 800 Germans singing "England Belongs to Me" was a bit mind-blowing, really. But it was good because they were singing it in the right sense, you know, that it was just a good sing-along punk song rather than any sort of deep motive in it, which was great.
what's interesting to me is why is this scene, why is the Oi scene the only scene that has to bring politics into it? It is surely it's a music scene, and like it's the only scene that's ever you've got to stand by what you say. You've got to have your badge on your arm, or if someone asks you a question, you can't evade it. You've either got to say I'm left, I'm right. There's loads of other music scenes, and we're talking about pop, dance, you know what I mean, heavy metal, whatever. And they could just play music and be accepted for that. Occasionally you might get a band which will go and do a Greenpeace benefit gig or something like that, and they are the ones that are proud to stand by it, but that's their choice. But it seems like in the Oi scene, you don't get a choice. You've got to say one or the other. They want you boxed, so they can pinpoint you. And I think it goes back to the old thing that most people are still scared of Oi. And the stuff that's been written about it in the past has been a lot of bullshit, and they're still very unsure. There's no smoke without fire. What are you? Go on. Let me stick you in a box and then I feel more safe with you, I'm more at ease, I'm more comfortable. And we're not having that. You know, I don't need to be put in a box, I couldn't fit. But, you know, no one's doing that to us, we just want to play our music.
Everyone has the same message. Elections coming, not a choice.
With the press hovering around like vultures waiting for a corpse to feed on, and Oi becoming something of a nationwide cult, the bands made a pact not to sell each other or the fans out, unlike the original wave of punk. The conference was held in June of 1981, with representatives of 57 bands attending, and contrary to popular belief, strike benefit gigs and police harassment were on the agenda, not race war. To back this up, the Foreskins, the Business and the Last Resort set up a series of dates to show that Oi wasn't just about mindless violence. Ironically, the riot at the Hambra Tavern in Southall on the 3rd of July 1981 and the media hysteria that surrounded it made this conference seem a million miles away.